We are live. So welcome everyone to episode 47 from Spark to Scale, Networking that Drives Startup Growth. We are happy to welcome Tricia Bitetto, who is the program manager of the amazing Venture Café Cambridge, which is the largest weekly tech meetup in New England, and it is growing by leaps and bounds. Welcome, Tricia, to the show. So glad to have you. I guess I'll start with our first question we ask all of our guests, which is, what's one cool networking event you've been to recently?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Amelia and Jeff, and I know the two other hosts are so kind of you. I know I've gotten some messages from the folks. It's so kind. Thanks for having me. So, so the coolest networking event I have to, I work at Venture Café. I'm the program manager there. I get to book speakers and create the experience that is Venture Café Cambridge, which is an industry agnostic networking event. So I would have to say Venture Café Cambridge is particularly an event. It's every Thursday. So this coming Thursday, we have like Life Science and Health Innovation Night. So we're working with the Icelandic government, and we're working with the Korean health sector to talk about some up and coming like trends, investment opportunities. And that's just one of the cool happenings we're doing. The following week, we're having an AI 12 AI television shows from the same production company come. So they're doing a panel discussion. People from Cartoon Network and won Grammys and Emmys have all been kind of working on these AI television shows. So they're going to be doing a panel discussing it, and then they're going to be demoing it at 7:00 in our main networking space. So I'm very excited for that.
And I'm jumping ahead because I'm just curious. So AI TV shows, does
That's
this
right.
be like, is it all AI? Can you tell us more about that? I know that that's like totally sidetracked, but I've never heard of that
cool.
before. Now I'm interested.
My job rocks. And that sounds I get to it's just amazing. So it's basically like a choose your own adventure. So it's like a lot of them are animated. Some of them aren't but you just have to come and find out, really.
Plus my arm, I guess I'll be there.
Right, no, I'm going to be figuring out that one. So tell us a little bit more about Venture Cafe and kind of the history. You were telling us a little bit before we got on the air, but a little bit of kind of the background about it and kind of I guess you've talked a little bit about your role, but I'd be interested to hear. I've been a couple of times. I definitely should be going more, but it's like you get busy and whatever. But it's a great event. It's always amazing. It's packed. But anyway, tell us a little bit about the event and kind of what its goals are and what you're doing with it.
Yeah. So it's out of CIC. So Cambridge Innovation Center is a co-working and hot desk space. So that's like a kind of our parent company. There's about 9 locations around the world. And Venture Café was created about 10 years after CIC was created in order to have high-level conversations between founders, to talk about hiring, to talk about retention, MVPs. And that was about 16 years ago. So Venture Café has definitely grown. This is the flagship location. This was the first location. It's in our CIC headquarters. Venture Café Global headquarters is in Cambridge. And so we're industry. It's grown. So we connect our clients in this building. We have there's $7 billion of IP in this building, and so people are able to connect with each other, and then of course with the outside world. There's such great educational institutions nearby, great companies nearby, and so the synergy is really unique. It's industry agnostic, so we have anything from like AI to cybersecurity, working with legal. We've had marketers here. We've talked about how to pitch. We're having a big Pitch to Tokyo competition coming up in October. The deadline, I think, is October 5th. But we're sending a founder from Cambridge to Tokyo with us in March of next year. So that's another thing we're doing. It's going to be a judged startup competition. So apply to our website. And it's really cool. I get to basically book sessions and work with sponsors and work with program partners to really create a dynamic environment. I grew up in the New Jersey area and had been for a long time part of like the Princeton and New York City type of networking cohort. And I was, as a young woman, I was quite, it was kind of intimidating. And so everyone's, here's my business card, and not a lot of smiling. It's very kind of, what can you do for me situations. But Venture Cafe is very much like you can walk in with an empty notebook and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing like an oversized silicone paperclip company. What do you think? What do you think I should do? What's the next step? Who should I meet? And people will say, oh, have you thought about this? Let me introduce you to this person. It's very giving. It's very warm, warm environment. And it's just, it's, people can bring their whole selves to work. I actually went to Venture Cafe before I worked here. And I was expecting to meet programmers, and I did. And one gentleman brought out his, I tell this story a lot, but one guy brought out his phone and showed a picture to this group that were chatting, and was like, oh, here's a parade float that I made that's going to go down the streets of Italy where I grew up. And coming from a more rigid networking environment, I just was so blown away by safety, the psychological safety that's there, where people can really just bring their whole selves to a networking event. And gosh, I've really worked hard to preserve that and really expand that. And we've seen about a 40% increase in the last couple of years. We had a 6-month surge of like where that really happened, and we've been able to maintain those numbers. About even improving diversity as well. Like, it's just been really, really great. So, yeah.
No, it's awesome. I am, as you're talking, I'm just thinking of the times that I've been there, and just the diversity of people, from students all the way to people who have had founders, whatever, 6-time founders, whatever it is, people from all over the world, people in the sciences, people. I mean, it's a really cool event. And I'm always sending people there, because one of the things that I do in my world these days is I've been helping a lot of job seekers, and a lot of them are like super afraid to network, right? And so I will often mention Venture Cafe as a great place to go as a sort of somebody who's new to networking, because there's just such a range of people there, and to your point, it's not as formal of an event, as some of the other things, and so it's just easier to kind of ease into it. It's funny because I was with my job seeker group this week, and one of the guys that I had recommended Venture Cafe to was recommending to the group, oh, you need to come and meet me at. It's like, oh, this is cool. So it is a really great event. One question I have for you because of that is, what do you like if you were to give people who are sort of new to networking, either because they're younger or they're like me, they were like stuck in like the corporate world and didn't network very much, like coming to Venture Cafe for the first time, like what advice would you give them of how to go about kind of meeting people, talking to people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, I find that some people can feel overwhelmed actually by the sheer number of people that they'll see when they walk in. And so it's like, do I just insert myself into conversations? Do I, and I would say in terms of networking, I would, make sure you get a sense of what you're kind of looking for. It could be, I want to meet one person. I need to just relax. I was rejected by whoever 5 times this week. I just need to talk to people who understand that.
Right.
I'm looking to build a company, and I'm just would like to get some feelers out. We have like a no sales environment. So that's, a lot of people are like, the easiest, I think some ways people can feel like it's a crutch of like, hey, I have this new program. It's like 5 sessions for, or whatever, like here's this product for this price. And it can really actually turn off a lot of people at Venture Cafe. People aren't really used to that. And it's a no sales environment. So, but it actually is a great challenge for people to be like, what do I find interesting about what I'm doing? Like, if I'm not employed right now, like, how am I spending my time? I've been finding myself like gamifying things, or I've been finding myself reading the news, or I've been finding myself like pardon me, like just being kind of being curious about a particular company. And so I would say like just that actually might be a great place to lead. Another great thing is you could just start asking people interesting questions like, hey, what brings you here? What's the most exciting thing in your day that happened today? Or like, what are you looking forward to for the fall? Like those are some pretty simple questions, and I feel like the misnomer is you have to have everything ready to go. I have to have understanding what my business is. I have to understanding what my customer is. I have to understand what my growth person is, what my growth path is in order to be a good networker. And that's not true. You can be like, people are reasonable people, I'm curious about, what's Kendall Squares like? What's it like to network here? The cool thing about Venture Cafe too is we have our name tags, which tells you how many times you've attended. So it's pretty democratized in the sense that you don't know who's an investor, who's a founder, who's in corporate, who's in government, who's in education, and it's really designed for like long-term relationship building. So you can really get to know a person. But a great conversation starter is, oh my gosh, you've been here like 100 times. I'm at like 119, I think, right now. But people have been there about 300 times or 400 times. About 30% of the people who attend regularly are there for the first time. So you can be like, oh, it's your first time. Like, how did you hear about this too? Like, it's very conversational, and people come every week. I mean, many of the attendees, and I know this because I see the numbers, but just come every week. Like, it's a Thursday event. It's from 4:30 to 8 o'clock. The programming is great, and they're there for the programming, whether it's in their sector or not. The kind of the serendipity of meeting people in different sectors all in one place we're interested in growing and building is really awesome, and it really creates like this really interesting mix of people where they found like their co-founders or investors, but really just having like conversations with, if you're in like manufacturing but talking to somebody who's in marketing or who's in legal or who's in biotech actually, and talking about their manufacturing of drug discovery versus like more of a building material situation. It's like you never really know where the overlap will be and what the synergy looks like. So got to come and explore.
Yeah. Absolutely.
One of my favorite things about Venture Cafe too is just the innovation spirit that's kind of in everyone there. Like there's founders, but there's people who are just kind of one-off people who might work in a biotech or a pharmacy role, but they're there because they're in CIC, and it brings together so many interesting people. How did you find yourself even involved with CIC and get it? Like you said you attended before you even worked there. So what was that story? Did you attend like, oh my God, I have to work there? Or how did this all come about?
Yeah, I found CIC originally during COVID actually. So because in person was kind of out of the question, they did a lot of virtual events, and I found a virtual event, and I met a really close friend, now a close friend, who attends regularly as well. And so we just hit it off, and she's like, oh my gosh, CIC. She kind of only talked CIC up for me. And then I eventually got a job there. But my career has been, it's a quite interesting career. I mean, I guess I'm biased, but I started in entertainment in New Jersey. I worked at a nonprofit theater on Princeton's campus, McCarter Theater. Moved to Boston to be a comedy producer at ImprovBoston. I was a lead producer there for a year. Pivoted. I wanted to become a baker, actually. I wanted to do professional baking. Pivoted. Was doing baking here professionally for like 4 years in Boston. But the baker's hours allowed me to go to a number of networking events. I was working 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. It was a complete shift in my life. And because I was up at 11 a.m., I could go home and get ready to go to a networking event, check out MBA fairs. I started working with a coach, an executive coach based in Paris, to work on 2 startup ideas I developed. And then I ended up working for a startup in Barcelona because the hours 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. is actually 9 to 5 in Europe. So I kind of had meetings with my boss at 2 in the morning, and then would head to work, and then still come home and have time to make calls for business development for their company. And so during this time, I just started really getting interested in the startup world. Boston is, many of us know, it's a great place to build. It's a great place to start a company. There's a lot of resources here, a lot of people who want to help each other. Of course, great schools here. And so that's kind of what started my path on being in a startup. And then I eventually wanted to leave banking. And so I joined CIC as a concierge. I was in the lobby, actually. And when you're in the lobby, you get to meet everybody. You get to see the VCs. You get to see the C-suite. You get to meet our clients. You get to meet other organizations that are visiting. I met Jimmy Buffett at one point came through. Cool. The Prince of Belgium came through. It was really cool. And I started pitching ideas to different teams, and was working with different teams on other projects outside of my regular duties. And because I had worked in entertainment and had been booking already and looking at tech and had connections already, it kind of they liked my ideas about where the Venture Café could go, and I think I'm really very happy that it worked out, and it's been a really satisfying 2 years here so far. So,
do you feel are you the kind of, we often have this sort of introvert extrovert conversation on the show, but do you feel are you sort of somebody who you would have said when you were in high school, oh, I am a natural networker, or were you somebody who sort of learned like me to be a networker?
Yeah. Well, some would say I'm a natural networker, only just for the sake. I was actually a theater major, so right. Yes. But that said, and when I was in Princeton, it was definitely a more it was a more reserved, arguably reserved, for lack of a better word, environment. I was totally intimidated. I felt like I would get in my car afterwards and just being and I eventually had to coach myself through it and be I didn't say anything inappropriate. I didn't make anyone feel awkward. I just was, sometimes there are quiet moments. Sometimes I don't have something to say. Sometimes I'm just agreeable. Sometimes I'm just being enthusiastic and supporting somebody else. And sometimes I have questions, and it's just sometimes it's just there's society. I feel society, but in general, it's really, you want to have a purpose. You want to have you want to know what to say. Right. You want to be led. You want to you want to be told sometimes the ways you want to be told what to do and how to behave. And networking is one of those things where you really have to lean on yourself, lean on your authentic self. And nobody can really tell you what that looks like. You just have to kind of keep doing it. But I find that awkward feeling when I would sit in my car was just myself expanding just a little bit for more love to go in and more understanding for people. And myself. So after a while, I would say, okay, this is a good feeling. It's because I really tried, and I really put myself out there, and I'm gonna try it. And now it's very natural, and it's just from habit, and repetition.
It's funny, as you were talking, I was thinking, gosh, I had never really made the connection between, sort of obvious now that I think about it, but that connection between improv, comedy, and networking. It's to some extent that, actually, I was telling this story the other day about how the only time I ever auditioned for a theater production was in high school. I can't remember whatever the Shakespeare play is that has twins in it. Is it As You Like It or something? I don't know. Anyway, they were doing the play. My brother auditioned. He was you cannot audition. You always do everything that I do. Whatever. I want to do this by myself. And I was I did not audition. Of course, they bring him into the audition, and the student director says, "Oh, he has a twin." And so they found me wherever I was, in the school, and made me come audition for this. And I didn't know anything about acting at all. And so I remember very vividly, what you were supposed to do was you got to say one sentence, you had to say the sentence over and over again, and you had to have a conversation with someone else, which I'm sure is a pretty standard, sort of improv thing. And I remember that what I did, which was completely not what you were supposed to do, is I was just going like, I'm going to show the range of emotions. Like I'm going to be mad and sad and blah, 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 blah. And what I didn't do was pay any attention to what the other person was doing, which probably drove them crazy. And so what I didn't understand about this, sort of audition was that what they were looking for was, could I respond to the person I was talking to? Not, can I just make up a bunch of random crap and make that person have to respond to me?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
So it's funny because I don't know if I'd ever put two and two together. Like that's what, when you're networking, like you have to learn how to read the other person. You have to ask them questions, you have to be interested in them as opposed to just vomiting, whatever you have to say. So anyway, I had never made that connection before, but I think that's a really interesting. It totally makes sense. But.
Yeah, I think good questions help. I mean, it's like, it's tricky. Nerves really can reveal themselves in like funny ways, So I, don't beat yourself up too much. It's just
it was a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I love like good questions that are interesting. I think for both people, like, do you think you're a creative person? It's a favorite of mine as well, because a lot of people may say no, and you're like, well, why? And then you think about like the history of the universe and how there's never been anyone like you in the history of the universe and never will be again. And like how you interpret things, even if, you may seem like people think they have a boring life or something, like there's still something that's so interesting about that. And so that's right there is like, all of a sudden I could have a long conversation about that. So it's like, I think it's just like the small things really have a lot of weight. Yeah. But I think improv totally helps. I think I think honestly, improv helps me the most by giving myself a sense of humor. Like, and honestly, forgiving myself for not maybe having exactly the perfect words, like the perfect like compliment. I'm like, oh, I really wanted to say that I really like this about what they're doing, and then you can message them on LinkedIn later. Like, I just think like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like, I don't know. I think people are I think naturally people are interesting. And I think if networking, if you find people interesting, networking, I think is easier. But a lot of people really have concern over ROI. And like, if I go to network, like I want to make sure that I meet this person and this person that keep me motivated. And there's some weight to that. But I find that, that you're not really being so connected to a return on investment with people, because you just never know, like where people will take you and what, who they know and what their background is or what their passions are. Like, so that's why I kind of just think like good conversations, like if you can have compelling questions, like that allow, not necessarily that you're not trying to like corner people to like talk to you and that, but just kind of like questions that allow sort of sense of like freedom and of expression. Yeah, I say that's helped me be like successful in networking, I'd say.
I like that. Trying to figure out what people do outside of work and finding out who they honestly are. Because it's funny how you bring up ROI versus just being genuinely interested in people, because I think a lot of people or at least I know I did. I started networking because ROI was like, hey, I want to get clients. I want to do well at my job. This is how I'm supposed to do it. But I think it's really easy to get burnt out if that is your only goal. And I personally find people interesting. And I think that meeting interesting people and just hearing what they're doing, finding out what excites them, how they interact with people, that's why you end up enjoying networking and staying at networking and building relationships. And now it's to a point where I can go to events and like, yeah, we can talk, like, what do you do? Cool. That's fun. That's nice. But it's really nice to just be like, What are you doing this weekend? Do you have kids? Where do you live? What are your hobbies? And just to really understand how people tick. How do you ever have advice for people on how to get out of that ROI mindset?
I don't have to really necessarily, I think it's a good question. I mean, I don't try and encourage people to get out of it. I think there's pros and cons to it. I think like sometimes there's plenty of networking events in Boston, and there's specifically biotech networking events, or there's specific fintech events. And so in those events, if you're specifically interested in only talking to fintech, then that's like, those are great events. Like, but I think, it has really affected how I program actually too. I want to make sure that I do have investment events talking about financing, talking about the founder's journey, talking about legal, talking about technologies, like AI technologies, so that that's what I kind of try really look to do in terms of making sure that there's like great people at the networking portion, but then people can actually bond and find like-minded conversations around the program. And that can kind of bleed into the general networking space, or also really just talking to the speakers and helping people get more connected in those sectors. So I just think like, personally for me, I feel like if I have a particular goal, it's good to have a goal and then kind of like let it be, and then do my best, and then just see like, how did I do? Like, what would I do differently? Could I have said something? Like somebody asked me once, they're like, hey, I have this new AI company. What should I like, how do I bring this? Like, how do I ask people about it? Because there's like a no hard sales policy and you don't want to be salesy, right? So you could say, hey, when you think of like an AI platform, like what comes up for you? Like, is that a stressful thing? So you can even kind of enter it in and just get some information about the person's experience. And that way, if like someone says, I hate AI, I don't like it, I don't trust it, I don't want to be part of it at all, then you're like, okay, well,
not gonna ask your opinion then.
Excuse yourself, and then you can talk to somebody else. Like, so it's a really diplomatic way of like just talking to people and like seeing what they think, and be tactful, respectful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're coming up on time. I just have to add like one little thing, because I just think it was a funny networking thing. Was I don't even remember, Tricia, how exactly you and I connected. I think it was just on LinkedIn. Somehow anyway, whatever, it doesn't matter. My point is, we connected on LinkedIn probably because we know somebody in common. Yeah. But what was funny was, I didn't even realize, like, I had been talking to Katie, our mutual friend, about this idea, and then you and I had a conversation like a couple of weeks ago. Like, especially, I'm like, wait a second, the same person is on like we had a meeting about this thing, and I'm like, this is the same person that's going to be on the podcast next week. Yeah. And I think that's like sort of a cool thing, is when your network has become, sort of large enough that those kinds of weird connections start to just sort of naturally happen. And literally something similar, it's like to that happened to me last week, where I was talking to somebody who somebody had introduced me to, and then they're like, oh, well, do you know this other person? And like, like this person is like Delaware, and the person they were asking me if I knew was in Boston. And I'm like, yeah, I do know that person. I was just talking to her. There's kind of these wacky things that start to happen because you've just sort of, I don't know, I feel like it's like every, 6 months, it's like I feel like I move to the next level in the networking game, I guess.
I call it a web. Like you start, like it's like you're like your own little spider building a web, because you have all these little points and you're trying to connect them all, and you just keep getting bigger and bigger, and eventually they start all connecting with each other. And it's like the theory of like 3 degrees of separation, or whatever it is, that if you go like however many numbers out, chances are you'll all have someone in common that because that's how small the world is.
Absolutely.
totally.
Anyway, on that note, we really are way over time, so that's cool, not a problem. But Tricia, as we mentioned, we like to end our episodes with people saying what's one cool event you've got you'd want people to know about that's coming up, or that you're going to that's coming up. And so I'll let you start, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, Venture Café is every Thursday in person at CIC Cambridge. It's right steps away from the Kendall Square T Stop in Boston, in Cambridge, right over the river from Boston.
Right.
It's free, open to the public, 4:30 to 8. It's varies every day, every week. VentureCaféCambridge.org. I'm also on the I'm on the advisory board for South by Southwest Pitch, so people can apply to compete at South by Southwest until like mid-November. We're doing our Pitch to Tokyo competition. We're sending a founder from our community to Tokyo in March, so that goes to October 5th. And then I'm also on the curation team for TEDxHarvard Square. So TEDxHarvard Square will be happening in March. February, I think 21st. So yeah, a lot of cool things happening, and I just really thank you so much for having me on, and thank you again. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I will go next, but before I tell you what I'm doing this week, Tricia, what's the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Tricia Bitetto, my name, and VentureCaféCambridge.org. You can also sign up for our newsletter. If you just scroll down to the bottom of our page, you can always see what we're doing. We send out a newsletter every Monday or Tuesday. A lot of cool things happening.
Excellent. Well, I guess I'm really excited about my next big event that's coming up is that on October 3rd, I will be one of the keynote speakers at Live to Lead Worcester, which is run by my friend Sherry Ann Clean. And she asked me, she's been on this podcast. She's just a great person, and we've connected and whatever, and through networking actually, and she invited me to speak. So I'm going to be talking about how you using AI to build your leadership legacy.
Wow, very good.
Connecting dots there, so that's my upcoming event. I'm so very excited about that, and I will pass to Amelia to bring us home.
Yeah, hi. So I have one event this week that I'm going to for FEI Boston. So they're hosting an event out in, I think it's in Westwood. It's at the Citizens Bank out in Westwood. But it's just a State of the Union economic kind of update. So nothing super, I don't know. I find this stuff interesting. I think not everyone does. But I love FEI. I love all the people there. I think it's such a great group, and it's the first event back after the summer. So we always take a little bit of a break. So it'll be nice to see everyone, connect with people, and then meet new people who have joined since the last event.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was an excellent conversation. Really appreciate it. And
thank you so much. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.